Hello everyone, welcome to another tutorial. So this tutorial will be basically like a Photoshop one. I will show you how to make this picture, right? This one. My Fontaine Futures glitch photo that is basically like several playing cards of red fontaines cut so you can see the glitch pattern, right? So I will show you how to do this. As always, I will include everything you need to recreate this down in the description, and the only thing I won't include is the texture. You can buy my texture pack on my Gumroad, but yeah,
Oh, okay. I see what you did there.
link will be in the description for all the stuff you will need for this. Of course, except Photoshop, you can get Photoshop on your own. Right, let's get started. So first we will obviously need to open Photoshop, and we will go into art and illustration. We select the 2000 by 2000 pixel grid, but we will need little bit more pixels, so we change it to 3000, but everything else is perfect, right? Okay, so let's click on create, just like this. We will need to create a new layer. All right, so we will need to just take our two textures and we will move them to basically Photoshop, right? Here we go. That's the Fontaine UV, and here we have the texture. So right now the texture looks way too dark, but that doesn't matter because the texture is such high quality that you can easily just go into brightness and contrast and up the brightness without any problems, right? You can still see all the details, right? Okay, but we will be using this texture later, so let me just delete that and let's hide this, right? So we will be having this, so we go Ctrl I to invert the background, so we'll have like a clean slate to work on. Right now we select the card, we go Ctrl T so we can modify the card, and let's just make it smaller. If we press Alt, you can see that you can scale it on the same place. So we press Ctrl T and then we click Alt. Let's just make it like this size. Let's make it like that, right? So we will need to have the rulers enabled because we want precise cuts on the card. So how we do that, we will Ctrl R. If you don't have the rulers, your Photoshop will actually look like this, so we press Ctrl R and we have the rulers, right? So now the glitch playing cards actually have like a few cuts. It has one right about here, it has another one right about here, it has another one right about here, and it has a last one right about like here, right? So this will be the cuts that we will need to do. Okay, so just zoom out, and those are the cuts that we will need. Okay, so right now we won't be using any of the cuts right now, but it's good to have them. It's good to have them like already set. Okay, so we will go and select the one and just select the border. Then we can use like any selection tool, and it will usually be like this, but if it's like this and we click, you can see that it deselects everything. Now we click on the two boxes, that is basically like adding a selection, and we will be adding all this. This is just to make it easier, so we don't have to like start clicking and clicking or like do a manual selection. Like Photoshop is good enough to select basic shapes. Okay, so now just create a new layer. Just create a new layer, press Control Backspace, and we have this white card, right? So you can see, if I hide this, you can see the card on the back. And let's call this base, right? This is red Fontaine, this is texture 00, and this is base. We can actually change this to air cushion, right? So we know that this is like the air cushion layer. Okay, so now let's just move our texture up just like that, and let's lower the opacity so we know what we are doing. Just click on the texture, press Ctrl T, and let's scale it down. About this looks good for me. You can always like add more or add less, right? Like this looks good enough for my taste. We can also rotate it to make it look different, etc, etc, right? So this looks good enough for me, at least, right? So we have this. Now let's just go into here and brightness and contrast, right? We press Alt and we click between the two layers, right? So we click here. Now every change that we make to the brightness and contrast, it will only affect the layer below it. Let's just make this brighter like that. Now we need to cut this texture so it looks good and it only affects the shape that we want it to affect. We do that by selecting Ctrl and clicking on the base layer, right? Again, we are here, we press Ctrl and click on the base layer. Now we make sure that we are on the air cushion layer and just click mask, right? Add layer mask, and just like that we have a perfectly fine playing card base, right? Now from here, what I usually do is select all this, go to Ctrl G so I have a group, and we can change it to base card. Right, now let's move this down and have the red Fontaine layer up. Now we click the red Fontaine layer, and if we zoom in, we can see that we just lost all that detail. Do not worry, we will be using the modifier right here, the opacity, layers, and the blending modes, right? So we click this drop down menu right here and we select multiply. You can use like other ones like darken, like color burn. It all depends on the effect that you are looking for. You can also use overlay and all that, but you can see that each one has a different effect. We want multiply. Why multiply? Because you can see the details on the red and the details on the white, right? So we will be having this. This is all we have so far. Now we select both of these and we duplicate it by Ctrl J. Now we go into Ctrl E and we just meshed all this. Now if we hide this, we can see that we have our card. Right now, why duplicating, why doing all that? Because if we do a mistake or we want to fix something, we can always just go with this. Now something else you can do is have this duplicated, Ctrl J, and instead of pressing Ctrl E to merge it, what we can do is going right click and go to convert a smart object. Now what does that do is, let me just go and click here and place OG base, so we know that this is like the original base. So what does this do is that it's basically like hiding all the layers and all the everything else. It's just leaving us with a more clean workflow. But if we want to change something, we just double click here and we see that it opens this panel and we have everything here. If I disable that, you can see that it's darker, etc., right? So we will now be here. Now from here we can actually change this back to white because everything is good enough, right? We can actually see what we're doing now. Now we will be changing the color of the background for something more like suitable for what we are doing. So just select the color of the playing card, the red of the playing card, and let's just move it this way. Or something else we can do is just select the color, press Ctrl backspace, and we can see that right now this is the background. You can go into hue and saturation, click here so it only affects the color layer, and we can make it lighter, right? Just like that. So if I'm not mistaken, the color from the original photo is something like that. Now right here we have the background layer, so let's just make a new folder and let's call it background. So we have everything like nice and tidy. Okay, now we will be doing the cuts that we need in order to start doing the composition itself. So we will need a new layer for each of the pieces, right? So right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. So we will need to create 5 copies, right? We will be working on each of them separately, but right now let's just leave it as it is. So select the first layer by clicking here. Now select this. Now click on the selection layer, rectangular selection, and just cover this part and press mask, right? Select the second one, cover this, mask it. Go into the next one, cover this and mask it. Next one over there, mask it. Last one, cover there, mask it. So now if we move a piece, you can see that it only moves that piece, right? So now we will just select the first layer and let's just slide it down a little bit, like around there. Leave this one as it is and just move this one to meet the other one, just like that. Select the last one and do the same thing. right? So right now we will be having this. Okay, so now we can basically delete this by selecting them, pressing backspace, or going to view clear guides. Right now you can see that everything disappears. Now we will be selecting this and just move it up a little bit. Do the same with the other one. You can actually like just make this easier. Start by the last one. Now click on that one. Now click on this one. Now click on the very first one, and there we go. Now we have some spacing. The spacing will be good for later for the shadows. So right now we have every single piece by itself, right? Now we right click and press into convert to smart object. Do this with every single piece, right? Just like that. So now if I click here, it only selects this layer. Okay, so now we have like the base itself. Let me just like make this a little bit smaller, just like that. That looks good enough. Just make this one tiny bit bigger. So this is just something that you will have to play with. Do you feel that is good enough? That it has the right spacing for something that is actually cut? Right, now we will select all the pieces, Ctrl J to duplicate it, and then go into Ctrl E. Why Ctrl E instead of right clicking and making it a smart object? Because we need to change the color of this. So just go select this, select black, control and press Ctrl backspace. So now if I hide all this, you can see that we have like a black layer, right? So now we will be playing with lighting and with fake lighting and like direction, because if light comes from this side, it casts a shadow on that side, right below it, right, just like that. Now if you want light going that way, just move it and so on, right? But before moving it, we need to make the black layer look actually real. So let's just call this glitch. This is the layer, just so I can have a better workspace, right? So right now let's just hide it. Let's zoom in, go into select the black layer, go into filter, go into blur, select Gaussian blur, right? So now you can see that if I go into 10, it's really blurry. If I go into 5, it's really blurry. If I go into 1, it's not that blurry. So I like to work on 2.5s and so on. Just click OK, make this visible. Now if we go here, you can see that it looks fake. It still looks fake. What do we what do we need to do to make this look real is we need to move this a little bit down, just like that. Now if we go out, we can see that it starts to look a little bit better. We can start moving it little by little until we find a variation of shadow and light that we like. Now of course, unless you have this indirect sunlight, this looks bad. Okay, so what do we need to do is lower the opacity to something around 65. Now we can even go lower to something around 50. Let's go with, see how this 50 looks. We can actually move just a little bit down. Okay, so this looks pretty good. We can always use like move the shadow layer, or just add a little bit more Gaussian blur. By filter, select Gaussian blur, I just add another 2.5, and then so on until you are happy with how it looks. Now this is basically everything you will need to do on the card. Now we need to work on the background. Why? Because if we zoom in, you can see it looks fake because of the background. By how the background looks, it's way too plain, because it doesn't have any texture on it. And in real life, everything, literally everything has a texture. So how do we make the background texture? Let's just hide all this, go into the layer O, that is basically the background. Go into filter. Now go into noise, add noise, right? And here we can add the noise. You can select the amount of noise you want. You want it to be very noisy, if you want it to be not that noisy, and if you want it to have a little bit of noise, like usually 12 works perfectly fine. You can see that it looks that way because, well, it's also being affected by our slider. Now if I place all this, now I zoom in, you can see that it starts to look more realistic. Now, in order to create like the composition itself, we need to change the size of the actual canvas. Now, the canvas that is used on Photoshop, like to use all the entire space, is 4x3, right? You see, 3 and 4. We can make it bigger, shorter. If you want a square, you can make it a square, right? So let's just click here, click enter, and press OK. Now we will work based on this. Now let's just select this, Ctrl J, and just make it a smart object. Why? Because we want the option to actually change everything and so on. So now that we have this, we just need to move it to the side, go into Ctrl J, or you don't want to be clicking Ctrl J, you can always press Alt and click here, click on that card, and you have a duplicate, right? So we need to duplicate this 3 times. So you can see we have it 3 times. Let's just place this on the center, just like that, right? So we can again click, go into convert to smart object, do the same thing on the top, like that, and like that. Now we're going to all this, we want to convert to smart object. Now to recreate the photo that I posted, just go select this layer, that is basically the layer with everything in it, go into Control T and just tilt it like around here, just have to eye it. So that's much, right? Let's go with 10, minus 10. There you go. We can also make it bigger, like that. That looks good. Well, basically this is it. That's all you need to create that composition. If you want to move the shadow, all you have to do is click here, then click on the first one, that is copy 3, then we'll click on glitch copy, and if you modify this shadow, it will do the same on everything else. Why? Because this is the parent layer. So if I move the shadow a tiny bit, I click the X, click on yes, click here. Oh wait, you can see actually something happening right now. You see a white background. That's because I left this layer turned on. So if we turn it off, now we save it again, you can see the layer is long gone. Close it, press yes. Now all of this has the same change. Close it and click on yes. You can see that this has the same modification as the other one, right? Before, after, before, after. Let me zoom in. Before, after, right? I like the before, so let's just leave it like that. So this is basically it. This is all you need to do in order to create that photo. Now of course this one looks different than the one in my Instagram because I use Lightroom to edit the photo, to make it look brighter, to add some like darker spots and all that. So from here is just basically your imagination. You just need to edit it on like a photo editing software to make it look however you like. Now if you would like to see how I do that, comment down below, let me know on my Instagram or here in YouTube, so I can make a tutorial. But yeah, this is basically like everything you need in order to create that photo. Now of course if you don't know how to export a photo in Photoshop, just go into file, go into export as, and I usually choose PNG. Why I do not choose JPEG is because JPEG is not that good of quality. PNG is like the highest quality you can use on Photoshop. You can also save it as a PSD, but that's something different. But yeah, this is basically it. This is basically a tutorial if you want to create that photo. So again, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you enjoy it. If you want to learn how to make any other photos I might have on my Instagram, please let me know. Comment down below, hit that like button, and subscribe. Peace. Bye.